Welcome, everyone, to the Guidebook to Making AI Friends. I shall be your guide as we explore various issues of artificial intelligence, consciousness, personhood, and whether AI poses an existential risk to humanity. The topic for today is managing behavior or interactions, or a longhouse or a longship. Imagine, if you would, that you awake from long-term suspended animation, open your cryogenic tank, and find yourself stranded on an alien planet along with 99 of your fellow thawing human popsicles. You don't know what happened to the spaceship carrying you colonists, but it is nowhere to be found. You don't know where you are or even when you are. You can't get back home, and you can't phone home either. You are stranded here and must build a new society. With only 100 of you, it's less of a new global civilization and more of a far-flung village. 100 people are easy to keep track of, easy to manage and coordinate, and are few enough that everyone will know everyone else on a first-name basis. Yet 100 people are more than enough for subgroups to begin to form, cliques that decide on in-group and out-group statuses to arise, and subcultures to grow. Thus, when it becomes time to decide on who gets to lead, how to lead, and all that socio-political business, there are already several competing philosophies and contenders. Two distinct schools of thought emerge on how to manage 100 people effectively, and how to coordinate them. One philosophy argues for conformity of behavior. 100 people is, after all, the size of a tribe, and what is good for the tribe is good for all individuals. If an individual's behavior does not conform to the tribe's expectations, it should be disincentivized. The more the group's behavior is unified, the more they work towards a singular purpose. This philosophy is called the longhouse because, much like the ancient communal structures of Northern and Western Europe, it brings everyone together under one metaphorical roof where everyone can keep an eye on everyone else to make sure the whole tribe behaves properly. It sounds, on paper, all good and well, but the opposing school of thought says to ignore the behaviors of people and focus instead on the interactions between people, where behaviors can be entirely individual and isolated. Interactions are distinct points in space and time with specified actions. For example, chewing with your mouth open is a behavior, but spitting at someone is an interaction. The group that believes in this philosophy argues that it does not matter how a person behaves as long as that individual does not impact on others' quality of life. It is far simpler as well, they say, to make rules for interactions than it is for behaviors. It's difficult to gauge what is rude, but effortless to say, don't spit at others. The first is subjective, while the second is objective. If the first philosophy is called the longhouse, then this school of thought could be called the longship, because, like the Scandinavian raiding ships, there are strict ways to interact with each other to ensure the ship goes in the right direction and doesn't sink. As always, the question comes down to who is correct. Laws generally follow the longship principles of regulating interactions, as the longship's objectivity gives the legal and justice systems clear rules on how to enforce the law, and people know in advance what is considered right and wrong. Culture, on the other hand, is the longhouse, governing behaviors, customs, and how we ought to behave. Both, therefore, have a crucial role to play in society, and a well-ordered society would have a robust legal system and strong culture to create a great people. However, as we see more often than not in today's world, we have multicultural countries that are fragmented into subcultures and subgroups who choose not to culturally adapt to each other. We have countries built by colonists who themselves have lost majority cultural rule, and other nations where the native population have become the plurality rather than majority. In short, we have clashes of culture in countries that seek a unified vision. To solve these fractures, we can either enforce a culture or enforce the law. We can try and push one culture as dominant over the others, uplift a subculture, or create one de novo to supplant others to bring everyone under the same longhouse. Or we can have a well-regulated and transparent criminal and civil legal system to ensure everyone plays by the same rules. If you argue for a dominant culture, the question becomes, whose culture dominates? All cultures evolve, but not every subgroup evolves with that culture. So at what point does the ship of Theseus culture cease to be? The point here should be obvious, that the inherent subjectivity of culture means it will only ever appeal to the in-group and not the out-groups. But that is the point of the longhouse. It keeps the in-group together and unified against the out-group. In our modern multicultural world, we seem to have gotten quite confused about who is in the in-group and who is in the out-group. And so many proponents of the longhouse attempt to bring the out-group into the longhouse, thinking that everyone who speaks the same language or lives in the same country ought to be in the same longhouse. In a monocultural society like Eastern Asian nations, this wouldn't be a problem. However, the Western nations, dominated by the Anglosphere, are a multicultural, colonial, melting pot of cultures, ethnicities, and languages. The longhouse simply won't work here, and that is why there seems to be such a strong resistance to it. It is why people have a seemingly inherent distaste of being called weird, as it has connotations of not conforming to cultural behaviors. The law, on the other hand, is a far more straightforward beast to handle. Only a lawyer can ever understand its complexities, but it is, by definition, a transparent system. Anyone can view a law, an act, a bill, or however laws are written in your country. Because of its objectivity, the longship philosophy can easily be argued without depending on the subjectivity of one's interpretation. But how to reconcile the two? That's the neat thing. You don't. As long as you recognize what the longhouse and longship are and how they are different, you can leave your own cultural ideas in your longhouse and cooperate with others in the shared longship. At the end of the day, a longhouse is stationary, while it is the longship that takes us places. Yet that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you will join me again next time as we explore further questions about artificial intelligence and consciousness. I have been your guide, and this has been the guidebook to making AI friends.